we need to deal with this crisis. And at the table, you had Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and little Palantir. So 1 trillion company, 1 trillion company, 1 trillion company. And at the time, Palantir was like a $30 billion company. If you can see the information that you really need to draw a decision, you can actually make a better decision. Everybody competes with Palantir, but nobody really competes with it.
A lot of people know Palantir, have the idea that Palantir is a black box, right? They tell you what they do, but it's very tough to really understand what they do, at least in yeah, that black box, at least in simple terms. So how would you describe what Palantir does? And maybe sharing here 1 or 2 examples would be great, so that people who have no context understand.
Well, the biggest abstraction I arrived to describe Palantir as a company is software to build software, which seems very weird at first, but once we connect the dots, is easier to grasp. The intuition behind Palantir is that every problem is essentially a data problem. If you can see the information that you really need to draw a decision, you can actually make a better decision. But why companies, why government have trouble into executing the best decisions is because most of the time they don't really have the information in front of them in a clear way. So Palantir leverages 2 key points to build a platform that helps companies, governments draw decisions. On one side, it integrates with essentially every other software, every dataset, so that they can create what they call ontology. Ontology is this word that is just emerging now, but a concept that Palantir has been working now for many years, which is rather than seeing part of your companies, or just seeing data as a row and columns, the ontology encapsulates all the company, the data, and relationships between objects. So rather than seeing your company as row and columns, you see this company from above, seeing all the connections that make the company operate. Once you have this picture, which can be called the digital twin, plane of glass, you can have full control of your company. On one side, you can start optimizing for specific variables, because you understand how the flows move within the companies, and you can more easily build new software on top of that, which is the key reason why I said is software to build software. You make decisions first, you optimize stuff, but the long-term goal of Palantir is not being a data analytic platform or just a data engine that digests data from disparate sources. No. That is only the premise, so that companies can then build applications on their own. So that's why the data analytics platform label that many people just attach to it is completely wrong. Palantir needs to be thought in the same way we think of Windows for PCs. When you think of Windows, you don't think of a normal application. You think of a backbone application that helps you run and build new applications on top of it. Obviously, there are also some base applications that you can use, but that's not the end goal of Microsoft. The end goal of Microsoft is having that infrastructure so that and even entire businesses can be built on top of that. And Palantir has been doing that already at a very, very mature stage with multiple big clients, but one in particular is interesting. Airbus started working with Palantir around 2015-16, when they had an issue with the production of the A350. They needed to rush the production because the management issued a strong guidance. There were high expectations, but they realized that their data, they were not able to meet the deadlines. And they called Palantir to help them essentially solve this problem. Imagine this: the company is in difficulty. They have a business issue, and what companies typically do is, okay, let's call McKinsey and help us figure it out. But the problem with consultancy is that they tell you what to do, but not implementing that. While Palantir is positioning itself as, okay, you have a problem. We help you understand what is exactly the problem. We help you solve this problem by using our software. So initially, what Palantir did was helping Airbus with the support of its employees, forward deployment engineers, build a Foundry solution that was tailored for Airbus. We need to think of a Foundry, which is the core product for enterprises, as a white operating system, which could be tailored for the specific needs of a company. So in the case of Airbus, they needed to increase the production speed by a factor of, well, a lot. And what they realized was that Airbus was struggling in the production because they had a problem with their data. Essentially, Airbus has a lot of subsidiaries around the world, one of the most complex supply chains, because what Airbus does is not producing everything, but they put together all the pieces. And even simple questions like, okay, what stage exactly are we with this plane is a simple question, but extremely, extremely difficult if your data sets don't talk with each other. In order to answer this question, you need to have all your data organized in a way where everything fits together, and you can have that plane of glass that I was discussing before, which is called the ontology. Once you have that, answering that becomes easy. Once you can answer this question, then you start asking yourself, okay, where is the bottleneck that is making me slower? Okay, you can work on that now. You can start building new applications on top of this to help facilitate this production issue. So this is how Palantir helped Airbus in the initial stage and helped Airbus increase the production speed by around 30%. But the cool stuff is that it doesn't end here. Because by working with Airbus, then new patterns emerged, and Airbus realized that they could themselves use this platform to give it to their clients. So when Airbus is now selling a plane, they also sell with this plane software, which is called Skywsie, which is the extrapolation of all the work that Palantir has done with Airbus, but made accessible also to the clients of Airbus. So Palantir helped Airbus create a vertical SaaS software that can have infinite number of users that Airbus is the owner of. So with this work, essentially Palantir helped Airbus becoming a software seller, because this Skywise is an integrated platform within what Airbus does. And what Skywise does is helping companies manage effectively the Airbus fleet of the clients. Imagine you are United Airlines, you are having your fleet of Airbus planes. What you really care is that these planes can work perfectly 100% of the time, ideally. And if there is some issue, like, okay, this door doesn't open, there is a valve that is not really working well, you need to know it almost immediately. And again, how do you know that? You need to have data that flows very effectively and maybe gives you a signal, okay, you need to make a pre-scheduled maintenance, preventive maintenance, so that rather than waiting for a disaster to happen, you work preventively on top of it, so that your core business, which is making people move from A to B with the plane, doesn't become hoping that your plane is fully operational. You know that. And the key interesting dynamic of this one is that with this kind of platform, Palantir helps Airbus becoming a vertical software seller intrinsically. And now they can even sell, like Airbus can sell software products to its clients, but it is a network. So right now, Airbus, like this platform, has more than 10,000 users, and it collects more than 140 airlines. So imagine these 140 airlines are using this software, and if they realize, oh, this software is actually cool, we can learn more about Palantir. And then you have this dynamic where Airbus, which is a Palantir client, becomes essentially an ambassador for the overall platform. I choose this example in particular because since it is a client for almost 10 years, we can see the development of how a single client can potentially go with Palantir. And Airbus is estimated to be one of the top 3 clients with more than $100 million per year.
And here, one question. I think let's say one of the common criticisms for Palantir is that you talked there about an implementation phase, and you talked also about other consulting companies. One of the arguments by many people is that Palantir, more than software, is a consultant-based business. I imagine that they have a part of professional services, but what's the business model here? I mean, how do they generate revenue? I believe it's both from professional services and software. But once you've gone through that consultancy phase, let's say, or the implementation phase, how does Palantir scale the revenue? Airbus is a good example, but I imagine that not all customers are like Airbus, right? That they have a lot of customers and they can do a vertical platform.
Well, Palantir is a consultancy company. It's not software. Has been like one of the key critics that the company and the stock faced. And I would say it was wrong, but not completely wrong. So it must be explained correctly. Palantir pre-AAP, which is the product that helped completely shape the direction of the company, was relatively very human intensive in the first parts, but for a simple reason. Companies called Palantir when they had a very strong issue for their business. And actually, that was the approach with which Palantir was dealing with customers. What is your biggest pain? We try to help you solve it with the use of our software, using these figures called forward deployment engineers, which on the surface, they look like consultants, but in reality, it is a very peculiar mix between a consulting figure and a software builder. And the initial phases of the company was trying to enter the company. We build you a pilot, and if it works, you spend on us like 5-7 million per year for this platform. And the more you use the platform as a typical software, the more users you get, the more use cases you need, the more you pay the Palantir to build that. But the company doesn't break down what is really financial, like professional services and software, because from the eyes of the company, there is no distinction. Like what Palantir does is selling software, but the FDE component, so the non-scalable one, is what is needed to get the confidence of the clients. Typically, the software companies have a model where they have a very thin product. They push it with a lot of marketing, salespeople, and since it is relatively thin, easy to digest, clients buy it with a couple of clicks, and voila. The problem with that is if you could solve very difficult business issues with such a software, the companies would not have that pain. So in order to solve a pain, the Palantir philosophy is we want to have an expert into solving problems with our software that has already solved maybe potential use cases that are similar. And once you are in, you develop the platform that works for you at best, and then it becomes like a completely revenue from software. But notice a simple thing. This requires that in the initial stages, the business model is relatively slow because you need to have forward deployment engineers to actually work on use cases.
How much time does it take to implement, let's say, in a large company like Airbus?
Well, it was a matter of months in the initial stages. As we mentioned before AAP, so before last year, a pilot could take like 6-7 months just to have a pilot, and then hope that the clients realize that this company, this software is valuable. But now since the launch of AAP, which is the AI platform, Palantir changed their go-to-market because they were able to show the clients business value in a matter of days. So in 1-2 days of bootcamps, Palantir can essentially already show a pilot that makes clients, wow, like in so little time, you already show me that you can solve this issue. And this completely changes the adoption curve, because clients can taste the product immediately, and this means they can also expand into much more use cases, much more licenses over time. So the process was extremely long in the initial phases. Now it is extremely fast, but is becoming more and more click and go like. But there's a key thing that, okay, so this means that now also Palantir is replicable. And I would argue that here is exactly what the source of the moat is. In order to arrive to a point where you have almost standardized a lot of use cases and you can work on a platform in almost no time, it required 20 years of things that don't scale, as Paul Graham said, to get to the point where Palantir is expert into solving use cases, while 99% of the software companies focus into, we build the thinnest product that we can maximize sales on with a very strong sales force. While Palantir flipped the approach. They went on into, okay, what are the most difficult business problems that we can solve? And not only business, but also in the government space, like war. So what are the most complex problems we can solve with our software? Let's do a lot of that. And gradually we softwareize what we do so that everything we do becomes much more scalable. But now a company like Salesforce, Microsoft, that have been really focused into we sell software, can't really flip the business model into, okay, now we become an engineering first company. We focus into solving business problems, and we let the product speak, because all their infrastructure is built into we build software, we push it with sales. You can't really build a software like Palantir unless you spent 20 years into solving use cases into all the industries. So Palantir right now, it is the only software companies that is both very horizontal. So Palantir can be used essentially for any vertical. Literally, there is where you can use a software to drive decisions, even building your vacation trip. You can deploy Palantir. So it's completely horizontal, but at the same time, since Palantir worked into softwareizing the most complex use cases, Palantir has built the knowledge to solve even the most specific use cases for any vertical. So previously we were talking about Airbus helping the production of the A350, but imagine Palantir helping the vaccine distribution. It's completely different.
And do you think there's any viable competitors in the market, or maybe some companies that show promise that maybe will be competing with Palantir head to head in the future?
My position on the competitive space right now is everybody competes with Palantir, but nobody really competes with it. What I mean with that is at an abstract level, Palantir competes for IT budgets. And how many companies there are to competing for IT budgets? You have both the big tech and then you have more specific software companies all trying to capture that side. But apart for the business incentives that create companies more sales-driven rather than product-driven, but there are no real competitors right now for the most critical use cases. And we see that in real cases. Okay, we're in Ukraine. What is the first company that went and actually helped Ukraine building a better intelligence so that soldiers could realize, okay, there is a tank there. I help feed this information almost real time with satellites. Same happened in Israel right now. In the vaccine distribution that I was mentioning previously, I remember I read an article about the UK needing to, we need to deal with this crisis. And at the table you had Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and little Palantir. So 1 trillion company, 1 trillion company, 1 trillion company. And at the time, Palantir was like a $30 billion company. So from these things, I realized, when it really matters to work reliably and in relatively little time, Palantir is the only company that is succeeding into doing that. So all the big tech companies are potentially competitor, and they try to build what Palantir does. Literally yesterday or the day before, Microsoft changed the name of one of its product, AI Studio, into Microsoft AI Foundry. And Foundry is literally the key product Palantir has. So what we are seeing right now is companies trying to converge to what Palantir is doing. But the reality is their focus is not into building that software infrastructure that Palantir has built. This more at an abstract level, but even more specifically with AI. Just to give a little sense, right now, all the companies are in AI are focused into or chip or into providing the cloud services. So you have the big tech, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, and in most cases, they also converge the models. And great. But how do you actually deliver big business value at scale, actually solving issues in whatever industry? You need what Palantir calls AI platform. So a software that is beneath the level of the models, so that companies can actually orchestrate models, an infinite number of models. Like, for instance, the CTO just shared a couple of weeks ago an interview where they said one of the biggest US insurance companies developed a storm of agents, 78 agents, that helped the underwriting insurance process from 4 weeks to 3 hours. And this, thanks to the power of the AI platform, that is not a model, but it is the platform to help companies use these models while also ensuring that the model is effectively reliable, because it doesn't hallucinate. Why it doesn't hallucinate? Because this AAP platform is strictly anchored to the ontology. The ontology is the source of truth that we were discussing before. And if the LLM operates within the ontology, there is always a source that the LLM can refer to, so that when the answer is provided, that answer is reliable. And then you have also all that part into, how do I orchestrate not one model, but many models in a reliable way, where the models can access what they can see, and I don't give all the access of all the company to the model.